This week with Sabir. In today's hot seat is Chris Lalomia. Chris is a successful entrepreneur and change leader that has built on his experiences working in the large with the largest companies in America and bringing his unique style to produce success in starting his business from an idea. And today we will be talking about one of those ideas. It's one of those businesses is the Trusted Toolbox, and he that's a multi-million dollar handyman and remodeling company, and has started the Home Service Institute to provide a community of like-minded service business owners who have a passion for providing an incredible customer experience. In addition to being so busy with a multi-million dollar company, he has written this book, amazing book, from the zoo to the wild, your guide to entrepreneurial freedom and wealth. I believe it's available on Amazon, right?
Yep.
So that you can definitely get a copy there and check it out. Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey, I'm glad to be here. Excited to share whatever I can share, but also just happy to talk with you.
I'm glad to have you here. We have covered the discussion of like B2B, especially the multi-sided marketplaces, and from the Trusted Toolbox is a multi-sided marketplace where you have to just kind of define it for our audience. It's you have a consumer on one end that needs a service, then you have a service provider that provides that service, and then you're the platform that actually makes that happen, right? That brings those folks together and with those services to provide those kind of services. And now, but before we dig into what you're doing there, I want to first establish like who you are and what led you to start up the Trusted Toolbox.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that. Happy to again to be on. So I started out in Michigan. I went and got my bachelor's degree and master's degree in mechanical engineering, got into manufacturing, and took off and went down that path of what I felt like was going to be success working in manufacturing. But since I was 17, I've always wanted to be an owner of my own business and start my own business. And so I had that path all along, but I didn't really know how that path was going to look. And as I kept growing in business, I found out that I didn't know anything about business. So I needed to go either learn about business by going back to school or jump into a company that's going to teach me. So I went to work for a company called Anderson Consulting, which is now Accenture, in Charlotte, North Carolina. And they said, I love that you are so passionate about manufacturing. However, if you do that, you will be on the road 52 weeks a year. We think you may have a good skill set to work with banks. So next thing you know, I'm working in banks, and I'm on what now is Bank of America, but was Nations Bank. I was on their merger team, helping stick together different companies and different banks. So there I was able to apply my tools and skills that I didn't realize I had, but started to learn about business. So I was developing my business skills, but applying my skills of linear thoughts and figuring out what's happening and figuring out how to solve big problems with a different team and do things. Then I got hired on at SunTrust Banks, which is now Truist, to fix their commercial loan ops. Again, still in the back of my mind, I've always wanted to start my own business, but I didn't really have that idea yet. I didn't have that opportunity. It wasn't really presented to me. I didn't really go out seeking it because I was in that wild world of being in the corporate zoo. And it felt wild until I got out here in the entrepreneurial world to realize what wild is. But I was being taken care of. I got a job at SunTrust, had 400 people working for me. I had a profit and loss of 20 million that I had to deal with. And so as I was doing all that, I thought I was successful. Outwardly, I looked like I was a very successful dude and making a lot of things happen. But finally, I just got fed up with the world of corporate America and said, I'm going to start my own business. And so this wasn't my first idea, but here I am now with the Trusted Toolbox 14 years later.
So, how many of those iterations that you actually went through? Like a lot of people think that, I'm working for Ralph Lauren or Tommy Hilfiger or Macy's or whatever, right? I want to start my own thing, right? And they think that whatever that thing is, maybe they were working on it in their basement or in their spare time. They think that that's the thing that's going to take them, that's going to become their thing after leaving the corporate life and working full time for somebody else, and they want to take control of that. Just to kind of share your journey, how many iterations did you do before it got to the Trusted Toolbox?
I love it. All right, I'll tell you. So number one, I was going to start a community bank. And I realized I really don't know anything about banking, and I didn't really know much about the community I lived in because I was always traveling outside of it. Second, I was going to go buy a manufacturing company that was supplying parts to the automotive industry, which was my 17-year-old self's goal that said by the time I'm 35, I'm going to run a machine shop that provides parts for the automotive industry. Looked into that business, did the NDA, looked into it, found out they were a sole source supplier to a assembly plant here in Atlanta that I knew because I know people who were working General Motors was about to get shut down. So that one went down the tubes. Then I went and looked at another opportunity to get into consulting, get back to IT consulting, what I had come from, and do process consulting, looked at that model, and then started to say I just didn't really think that was it. At that point, I was starting to get a little discouraged, and I said, okay, I got it. I'm going to go off and be a real estate developer and construction guy. And this is in 2007. By the way, I have no experience in it at all. And I said, I'm going to do this and start working on the business plan.
But what was influencing that decision? Were you watching a lot of HGTV or CNBC specials?
Yeah. And then I had a buddy who was going to grad school, and he was real estate development. He had these great ideas. He and I worked together at Accenture. I was like, yeah, good idea. We're going to put these things together. I'm going to do all these things I had never done before, and I'm going to go make a business doing it. Built a business plan. But where I was at the bank at the time was where I got to see what was happening with the real estate market in 2007. And to timeline everybody, remember in 2008, that's when it went down. So we started to see the cracks in 2007 because of where I was sitting. I was over the reporting arm as well as the commercial loan ops folks, and the reporting arm was saying, hey, we're having some problems in real estate, but it's not happening here, but not Atlanta, but maybe it might. And then the next thing I know, I was in a meeting, and I literally on June 17th of 2007, I went, this business plan is going to absolutely die if I try to go implement this now. It's never going to work. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to get caught up in something, and I'm going to lose my shirt. So I had to can that. And then I was bummed, man. I was just down. I was out. And somebody said, well, why don't you come up with a handyman company? 1-800-CALL Chris. So anybody calls you, then you just bring the landscaper, the dry cleaner, the maid service, the handyman. I said, I like that idea. A little too big. I'm going to scale it down and just do handyman, because I kind of felt like we were going to have a little correction in the market, but I didn't see anything that we saw, of course. So I came up with the idea for the Trusted Toolbox and launched it in 2008 on April 2nd of 2008, right before the recession.
But the thing is, the best companies in the world, if you look at Fortune 50 companies, they were pretty much, I think 50 out of 50 were launched during depression, during recession, during the worst of times,
Yeah, exactly right. I actually, the reason I wrote my book is I kept joking. I said, hey, when I write my book, I'm going to tell everybody, definitely start your business in the recession so you can drain all your savings. Hey, definitely start something in the handyman world because it's really easy. Wrong. So everybody says, hey, man,
nothing is easy.
Yeah. And that's exactly right. You always think the other idea is better. You always think the other guy is always ton it. We're all working really hard because it is a hard business to run. It's a hard business to implement, and it's been a hard business to scale. But that's been the fun part now. But those first 4 years were rough, bro. I'm telling you.
The thing is, it's rewarding also. You're learning something, especially if you, I don't know how much you knew about the handyman industry, right? How much do they earn? How much people are willing to pay you? Is the pay same thing in Kentucky as it is in New York City? You learn all those things, and how many people, what kind of licenses do they require? Licenses they don't require, depending on jurisdiction, you learn about those kind of things. To me, whenever I touch any industry, that's what excites me. Like, I'm going to learn something about this industry that I didn't know at all, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned real estate. I could start on zero. The thing is, since I'm starting at zero, I don't have any kind of preconceived notions of how a real estate should work. So I have no rules. I'll build it the way I believe. I mean, obviously following legal laws. I'm not saying don't do illegal things, but at least from a process standpoint, you don't have to abide by what every other real estate company is doing, what every other handyman service company is doing. You don't have to. because you're new to the game. You don't have all those preconceived notions.
That's a great point. The thing that's cool is that when I jumped into this, I didn't have, well, this is the way we've always done it in my head. I'm a pretty handy guy, so I understand how to do a lot of stuff around the houses. So that's definitely part of it. I like being in a Home Depot, a Menards, a Lowe's. I've always loved that. But I also felt like I'm going to bring a different level of home service providers to the customer and the different customer service experience, which we have been able to do with the professionalism and putting it together. And it's really starting to play out now. When I first started it, it really wasn't a need. A lot of people just expect some chuck in a truck to show up and take care of their house. We'll find somebody. My neighbor has a friend. And this is, when I started, Google wasn't Google that it is today. And so you still couldn't really find people on the internet as well as you thought you could. And there were people trying to aggregate these, but it wasn't really working. So now what we've done is we have the ability to deliver the right guy to the right job on the right day. And there are employees, not just some service contractor here in Atlanta. And then we have also multiple places where this is going on as well. So we were able to change it and really start to implement it. So we actually got better as we got bigger by not having that preconceived notion that you just talked about.
Let's start with the year one, right? It's a figment of your imagination, right? You say this is what I would like to do. You are employee zero. The reason I say employee zero, not employee one, because you're not getting paid. You're not getting paid.
I love that you said that. That's exactly
You're
right.
employee zero. You're not employee one. You're zero, right? So you're employee zero. How do you go from there? Because you said that you have handyman skill set, and then you had professional business management background, right?
Right.
You manage these humongous corporate American brands, right? You need people. You need people who can build a website. They can build a database, and they can do marketing for you, and all of these other technical skill sets that you may or may not have. So how do you go from zero to start to form your initial team?
I love that you asked that question. So, number one was I was building a business plan before I launched my business. And I'm not talking about getting a piece of paper and writing out a business plan or going out and using a template and filling it out. I'm talking about I actually took a template from SCORE, but I started to find mentors that I could start to bounce my ideas off of. So I built my how am I going to get leads? I built how am I going to convert leads? I built my how am I going to actually service these leads? So I built the business plan. But you're right. My functional org chart, all my employees, I guess, as you put it, you're right. I was zero. And so what I did was the month before I started, I sold my Mercedes. I bought 2 white vans. I wrapped them. I hired my very first employee. And then he and I went out. He would go in one truck. I'd go in the other. I'd start drumming up business. I'd do estimates. I'd start doing work. He'd start doing work. And everything I did was building what we have today. Today, I've got 32 employees here in Atlanta. And then we have numbers of others in other locations, but 32 here is the big part. And as we were doing that, I was building my functional org chart. So I needed somebody to start answering the phones. So I hired my first CSR, my office manager. And then eventually I needed an operations manager to help schedule everybody because I was out there primarily doing all the selling all the work and getting it going and then figuring out this program. So as you scale, that's been the hard part. But you're right, man. Month one, I had the 2 vans. They were all wrapped. And I remember sitting there and I was going to run the phones. And this is before all this fancy phone stuff. I just put an extra phone line in my house, forwarded it right to my cell phone and said, okay, I'm going to open up on April 15th. Well, on April 10th, I said, hey, I'm going to give back to my church and I'm going to advertise in it. Well, they ran the ad a week before I was ready. And I was sitting in church looking at my ad with no phone ready to be forwarded. So I grabbed the family right after, go to Best Buy, buy a phone, stick it in there, get the auto forward put on, and forward it to my cell phone. And sure enough, I got a call that afternoon. And that is crazy to think,
It feels good, right? The first customer who
Yeah.
validates your idea that, this may work.
Yeah.
But how do you know this is going to work and work again and work again, and it's going to turn into a serious business?
So in the beginning, man, I was just running, bumbling, stumbling. I was just charging as fast as I can. I'm going to be a millionaire. I'm going to make $1 million. I'm going to do this, trying to follow my business plan, doing all the things I'm doing. I'm out there rumbling, bumbling, stumbling. And the first 4 months, people weren't saying recession, saying, hey, man, I think we're going to be a slowdown. And then it really started to take off. And I'm like, well, good. I'm at a smaller level. I'm a handyman. I'm going to thrive in this business because people are going to want to keep fixing up their houses and not sell them. But if you live through this, you realize people weren't fixing up anything. So I still felt like I could make this happen, but I started to get really down in about that fall time period here in the Atlanta market of 2008, where I bid a job to fix a window as for an HP executive. Figured, oh, come on, man, this guy's got the money, no problem, let's do it, right? Nothing, ghosts me. February, finally calls me back, says, hey, Chris, I'm ready to do it. I'm like, all right, well, what happened? He goes, hey, man, I didn't know if I was going to have a job. And so I was just doing what I had to do. I put duct tape all over that window and I kept it up, but now I'm ready to get it fixed. So I felt like it wasn't a can't miss. Anybody ever tells you your business is can't miss? And I had a lot of people tell me this, hey, man, this is a can't miss business. You're not, you're wrong, man. Because I felt good then. After year two, I felt like I had gotten through it and things were starting to happen. It was year three where I went, man, I really thought this was being successful, but I just don't know if it is. And so I went through that. A lot of times as the entrepreneur, you sit there and you got to fake it till you make it. But sometimes behind the scenes at 3:30 at night when I'm curled up on the couch, crying myself to sleep because what have I just done to myself? Like, oh my God, I thought I had laid out all the pinnings to be successful. But I was not as successful as I wanted to be. I was just starting to break even after 2.5 years, which was tough because I was spending a lot of money on marketing and advertising. So I became employee number 6, where I actually started paying myself after 2.5 years.
You paid other 5 people before you
all the time. Yeah. One of the things I'm very proud of is my entire career, and I talk about this. I've never missed payroll, never missed it.
It's interesting with that journey. One of the things that a lot of entrepreneurs tell me when they make this transition from corporate life to owning their business, but when you are in a corporate America, or even if it's a existing small business that's developed over past 25 years, what you have is an infrastructure around you. When I say infrastructure, I don't mean machines. I mean people also that take care of things around you that you don't have to take care of. The comment you just made about payroll, when you're not doing the handyman thing, you're running to the bank to make sure that the payroll account has enough money in it so that the checks could be written out to your employees so that you can continue having employees. That the money goes out to the insurance company for the healthcare plan, and you have to figure out what healthcare plan, right? That doesn't exist. It's not like you go into somebody's employment, right? They tell you, oh, here's the benefits package, and this is how many vacations you're gonna get. This is how much, what kind of a health plan you're gonna get, and all that kind of stuff. And invoicing, accounts receivable, accounts payable, all of that stuff. Somebody else takes care of that. You do your own thing, whatever that thing is, this much, compared to the entire company like this big, doing all the other things that go on, right? But when you become an owner of a company, like the journey you went through, right? You had those 5 people. I'm sure that you had other service providers around you too, accounting, bookkeeping, computer people, whatever, to do different things for you. You started realizing that you needed those people, because in the past you didn't have to think about it. They were in the picture. They were just taking care of it for you.
I had a person tell me before I started my business, he goes, you know what, Chris, I love that you want to start your own business, but until you have to run to the bank and get a check in to make sure you make payroll, you have not started your own business yet. And I was like, oh, that sounds good. Yeah. Ha, ha, ha. Sure enough, it happened to me on a Thursday night. I had to go pick up a $4,000 check, or else I was not going to be able to write payroll checks on Friday morning because I was still handwriting them at the time. And I got there at 4:20, got to the bank at 4:28, got the check into the bank as it closed so I could write payroll. And as I'm driving away, I was the happiest I've ever been. I'm like, oh my God, I just got the check. I can make payroll. Everybody's getting paid except me. And then it dawned on me, I'm like, oh my God, what that guy just said, he's right. So now you're into it. But today, you're right. Everything I built was pinning for where we are today, where we do have an automated payroll process with direct deposit, and we have a system in place, and I have systems and people and processes that make things happen that definitely helped, because without that, we couldn't have gotten better while we got bigger. As Warren Buffett said, bigger isn't better, better is better. So we've continually did that. But when you start thinking back in those beginning, those first year or two, how did you know? I really did at one point thought I had it all figured out until everything just starts smacking you in the face. And as they say, right, you can have a plan until you get hit in the nose, then you got to change. And that's a lot of the ebb and flow that people don't see about business owners or small business people going out to scale.
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of people, when they actually hear about your success, they call it, oh, he had an overnight success. Yeah, the overnight took 25 years.
Yeah. As I say, I'm an overnight success, 14 years in the making.
That's how long it took,
Yeah.
For example, they see someone like Gary Vaynerchuk, right? Gary V. He's a well-known guy online. Call it overnight success. He started with his wine library, and now look at him, how successful he is overnight. Yeah, 20 plus years.
Yeah.
That's what overnight is. But he just worked at it. It's a lot of hard work. One of the other things as being a business owner, especially startup founder, is that yeah, you have mentors. If you were smart, you said that you started with business mentors. You actually seeked out that help because you knew that you needed that help. Some people don't. They think that they have figured it out. And then when it's 3:30 a.m. and you are feeling vulnerable and you want to cry to sleep on the sofa, right?
Guilty.
you know, that's when you realize you don't have a person, a North Star to go to. Like when you're working in a corporate America, you could go and talk to your manager, you could go talk to your VP, you can go and talk to your HR. Some places have some online some sort of therapy or something like that at workplace. They have that, you can talk to someone. But when you own it, you own it. It's your baby. You need to figure it out. And then if you have a mentor, that's a smart thing to do. If you have a mentor, you can at least, and not one mentor, you need to have multiple types of mentor, because not everybody is great at everything. Your one mentor could be an amazing marketing mentor. Another person is an operations guy and or a gal and knows really well how the logistics of this whole thing is going to work out for you and gives you advice on that, versus dealing with human resources and people. Your first 5 employees, I'm sure you learned a lot about, who actually does the work and who thinks that there should be 3 other people helping them.
Exactly right. Yep. That's in the beginning when you start out with that small, your merry band of misfits, your little pirates, however you want to call them in the beginning. That's one thing, because you're building that tight knit culture. But as you get bigger, you got to realize that your culture has to grow with it, because you've got to be able to find that where that's going and how it's going to run, because that's going to keep you away from some of those issues that we all get, and we all get them.
Now you're in 14 years of this journey. How many of those first 5 employees are still there?
Believe it or not, 2 of them.
2.
Yeah. So now the contractors that we work with quite a bit, very much a gig economy worker, very transient. Maybe could probably do a lot of the stuff on my own. So in my office, in the office staff we have here, I've got long tenure employees now. We're up at 7, 8, 9, and 11 years.
Wow.
So the office staff has stayed tight. But our contractor group, it's a tough group to work with. Definitely somebody you've got to give them the reason to come join you, and you got to prove to them that the reason they're coming to join you and your platform and what you're doing is going to help provide for them and their families better than them on their own.
So chicken or the egg? Do you get the homeowners first, or do you get the handyman first on your platform?
Homeowners.
How did you manage that journey?
It's always got to be the homeowners first, because you're right. It is so hard. As we've started up in so many markets, you got to build the demand and then fulfill the demand. But I can't have these guys just sitting around waiting, because they won't wait. They have like, you told me this is going to be good and lucrative for me, but yet you're not bringing me any work, and I can't work with you. I'm going to go off and work on my own. I'm done. So we got to have the homeowners in the demand, and we got to find the right homeowners in that right demand.
So how do you manage that, though? I mean, do you have somebody at least interested on the handyman side, so that you get to know them and stuff, so they're ready to go when you're ready with enough homeowners in that area?
So as you start to build up that advertising and marketing, one thing I would say with a lot of handyman work that we do, it's not an urgent need. Your water heater's not broken, your air conditioning's not working.
It's an
Your water,
emergency thing.
so it's not really an emergency. So they're willing to wait. So if you can build up demand and start to schedule out, usually days away from where you're at. When you start to get to weeks, which we did during COVID, people start to get a little anxious. But usually in days, they're willing to wait.
Yeah, I mean, we will talk about the pandemic because pandemic, I think, let's. I'm going to be very creative. Put a wrench in it. We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
But so as you scale, you're like employee 6 now. It's 6 of you, and you start scaling the business. What sort of lessons are you learning as you're growing up?
So as I'm growing up, that's a great question. I learned a lot of lessons at that 6 to 10 employee mark. And what I learned there was when I used to come in and be my gregarious, outgoing self, we also just used to talk with my hands and do this and do that and say things and walk out the door and everybody would do it. I started to find out that not everybody was doing what I asked them to do when I took off and went off and did the sales. Because I had one other salesman. We're out there trying to drum up the sales and get people going. And I would just kind of sweep in and then sweep back out. Just like the thing that they all love about me was that. But what I found is that between 6 and 10, I needed to start to slow down, start to put more direction in the words that I was saying, more typing without being bureaucratic. But I had to lean back on some of those corporate America things that I hated. But I had to put some more of those processes in place because I realized I was frustrating them and they weren't doing what I wanted. Case in point was I came in and said, I want you guys to get these handymen scheduled over there. Go ahead and do that. Walked out the door. They didn't know where there and that was. And when I came back, nobody knew what to do, but nobody was willing to say, Chris, we had no idea what you're talking about. So I had to learn that it was time to slow down, start to put some of those things in, use those people for the skill sets they bring to the table and help them be successful. And that came from me being a little bit more disciplined. So that was a big one from 6 to 10.
So I think communication is a huge issue in a lot of cases, right? Because there's 2 things going on there, right? At least in my opinion, right? One, you're the owner of the company and you believe that everybody's on the same page as you. Not communication, just you think that they're on the same page as you.
Right.
Because your heart and soul is in it. You think that their heart and soul is in it. But to them, it may be just a job. They come in, they want to earn a paycheck to make the mortgage or the rent and buy some food and feed their family. That's it, right?
Exactly right.
It might be just basically that. And then if you don't give a proper direction or you don't bring clarity to everyone's job, it's actually as the owner of that, you own all of it. You're at the end of the day, the buck stops with you, right? As the owner, you can't blame. If you did not tell them and they didn't do it, it's not their fault. It's your fault.
Exactly right. And that's one of the things I learned quickly from a mentor. And I've had different mentors over the arc of my company, but at that 6 to 10 mark, that's something I looked at and took to heart. And that is, if they're not doing what you wanted to, whose fault do you think it is? And he said, you're looking at them. That's you, buddy. And you hit on something that everybody needs to take away. If you own your own business, nobody cares as much about your business as you do. And by the way, they shouldn't. In fact, I think Gary Vee says that quite a bit and stuff he says, because that's right. Why would they? Why should they? And you shouldn't expect them to. You should be expecting to give them a great place to be so they can thrive and take care of their family and their rent and all their bills. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it is. Like you're giving them an environment, a good environment for them to do their work, but the clarity into what needs to get done. Like even when there is a group of people rowing a boat, there's one guy who says row, 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 row. If that guy doesn't exist, everybody's going to row all different ways, and that little ship or boat is going to keep on going like this. It's not going to go anywhere. It's not. In fact, it's going to collapse probably. Right.
Yeah.
So as a leader, you have to do that, especially in the very beginning. You have to do that until you put the right infrastructure in place, their structure of people and systems and processes, so that they can handle that for you. Manager of this and director of that and VP of that, they handle their teams, so that the marketing team handles the marketing functions. Sales team handles the sales functions. HR handles all the hiring, firing, payroll, all sorts of things like that with the finance department. So, but until then, that you put in that infrastructure, it's 100% your responsibility. And
Exactly.
if anything falters there, it's your fault. Don't yell at anybody else. Don't go like, why didn't you do that? You should do it. No, you never told me.
Right. Yep. I said the same. I walked out going, I know I told you guys what to do. And finally, one of them said, Chris, we had no idea what you were talking about, man. You came in and you whipped right back out. You were being like the whirling dervish and took off. And we were like, no idea. And we didn't even know how to stop you because you were on a roll. And I was like, I got it. So that was a great lesson for me to learn early on about the communication, start to build those processes and then put the systems behind those processes to help these guys be successful.
Yeah, I strongly believe in anything you do, you test, learn, and optimize, right? That's a mantra that I live by, right? But when you're starting up a company and you're scaling it, uh, I would say that, I mean, are there right things you're doing versus wrong things? The way I change that is you're doing some things that are working the way they should, or at least you believe they are, and there are things that are horribly going completely wrong, left field.
Yeah.
You thought that putting $10,000 into this ad campaign on Facebook is gonna work amazing, and you're gonna get 100 homes signing up for you for a year. Zero signed up, and you spent $10,000. Given your 14 years of journey, what do you think were some of those kind of moments, not just marketing, but moments that you went like, you really believed in it, but it just went horribly the wrong way?
So I had one point about that 6 to 10 mark also that I learned a big lesson. Actually, it was more about the 6 mark. So I would write all the sales orders and work orders what they came, and then the guys would go out and do the jobs. And I started to get calls into the office, what we call callbacks. The job wasn't done to their satisfaction. In one day, I got 5 callbacks. Now, granted, I only had 4 people out in the field, and I had one person in the office and me. And I'm like, wait a minute, what is going on here? How can I get 5 callbacks that quickly? So I told the guys, I'm like, hey, we're going to close up early this week. So finish up on Wednesday. And one guy had to finish Thursday. What I did is I went out and did all the redos on Friday and Saturday myself, put myself in the van and went out there. And here's what I found out. I was really down. I was thinking, these guys don't know what they're doing. Well, here's what happened. On the first one, I didn't write up the estimate the right way. And he missed a piece that I never called out. And so the customer said, hey, if he would have done this other thing, I would have said I was happy, but you'd never put this on your, I didn't realize you'd never put this on your sales estimate to me. And these guys didn't know it. I'm like, okay, 1, 2. And it goes on. So I did all 4 of the redos. And I realized when I came back, it was like, boom, what have I done? So test, learn, optimize. Here's what I learned. What I learned was I needed to print out the work that they had to do and give it to them. This is well before the system what we developed for today, which we have. So I print out all the work orders, give them one copy for the customer, get a signature to start, a signature to end, and my redos came all the way down. Because expectations set allows for expectations to be exceeded or met, but we're still trying to work for exceeded. So that one little thing, it wasn't an aha moment, but it was an aha moment. That's as simple as that. Let me get your signature for me to get started. Let me get your signature that I completed everything to your 100% satisfaction. And it all started to come down. So that's just one. Then I had another one as we got a much bigger is that, we landed an $80,000 job. At the end of that job, it cost me true hard cost $84,000. I lost $4,000 on an $80,000 job. Bingo. What just happened there? Now that's not a test, learn, optimize. That's a test, get your teeth kicked in, pick yourself up off the carpet, figure out what you're gonna do with that $4,000 you just lost. So those are the kind of things that happen, especially in construction. Sometimes you eat the bear and sometimes it eats you. And when those happen, those are killers.
I mean, in that example, I would say that nowadays, because there's so much inflation, like during the pandemic, for example, the cost of lumber went up, right?
Oh, yeah.
That was one of the things, at least I know as a novice, that the prices went up. The prices of other things went up, supply chain issues, things that you would rely on parts to come from Italy and from China and stuff like that That there were problems like that. Well, so when you're growing this company, I mean, you faced some hurdles, like 2008 and 9 were hurdles. 2012 was another hurdle. And then you come to now, like everything is nice and hunky dory, and then pandemic hits, right? Now you have what, 2020, everything January, you think everything is going to be a great year, and then boom, March, the whole world locks down, right? uh, and now we're faced with multiple wars that are going on in the world, right? The one that's on TV all the time is Ukraine and Russia right now. Um, the challenges with constant lockdown in China, because of the COVID-19, that hasn't changed. The infection rates are getting increasing more and more, right? When it comes to these kinds of things, how did you pivot? I mean, I'm asking a very loaded question right now, right? But how did you pivot whenever, because you have to change sometimes you have to change your model, how and what kind of services you're providing based on what's going on in the world, and expenses going up and inflation hitting you.
So the first thing I would tell you is I'll take you one man's journey through the pandemic. What are the three phases of truth? First, you ignore it, then you vehemently deny it, and then you accept it as intuitively obvious. So when I heard about this thing called COVID in China and what was going to happen, I didn't have the foresight to see how it could impact me. So I ignored it. Then on March 9th, I had a guy who was supposed to be coming to my office, a consultant who was going to work with me on some other ideas. And he said, I can't come because I got to figure out what to do with my business. I'm going to be shutting down. He goes, well, man, I said, what can I do to help? He goes, you can't help me. You've got 18 handymen. You got project managers. You've got, at the time I had 24 employees. He said, you're going to be shut down. And I'm like, oh my God, Chicken Little, you're crazy, man. Get out of here. Get out of here, man. I don't need that. March 9th. On March 16th, I laid off my sales manager. I laid off my remodeling manager. I laid off a project manager. I asked the ladies in the office to take a 25% pay cut. I laid off my operations manager, and we skinnied down. And sure enough, we hunkered down. So when people talk about disaster recovery, that was disaster recovery. I had to cut and cut quickly, and I scaled down quickly and then sent everybody home to start answering the phones and that weren't ringing from the houses. We were deemed an essential business, so we were able to get some things done, but I was running a lot leaner ship. I was still running profitable. I was hanging on, but I had to do it through cutting hard. Now, here comes PPP, right? Who has ever heard the government, I'm here from the government and I'm here to help you? Well, I've heard that, but I'm usually running. So I didn't know that was So I was like, there's no way. There's no way. So back to the three phases of truth. I ignored it. Then I said, there's no way. There's some big catch. They're trying to do something to us. And then I accepted it as intuitively obvious. As soon as I got PPP, what happened here to us in Georgia specifically is our governor said, it's okay to open back up as long as you open up back up safely. And that happened on Memorial Day. So I was only really, quote unquote, shut down or really small.
3 months roughly.
Yep. And then in June, the phone starts ringing off the hook and it just starts building. And in September, I'm like, oh my God, for the first time ever, I'm in the right spot. And then what happens? Nobody wants to come back to work.
Work from home.
Yeah, nobody wants to go back to work. So I can't get handymen to come work. I can't find people. I got all this demand, and now I have nobody to serve it with. So now we're wildly underserving a market as we grew. Now we were able to grow up through it. But then what happens again is the supply chain. You talked about this. Not only could you not get materials, but sometimes when you get your hands on the materials, they were subpar and they were twice the price in some cases. And so those numbers are incomprehensible. And so as we grew into where we are today, the next two things you just brought about were exactly what we're facing right now in the construction industry, mostly on the remodeling side. And that is the Ukrainian war. Well, it's not, whatever. I'm not even going to get into the politics of it, but here's what it did. I don't know if you knew this, but most of our cabinets that come into the U.S. and are installed in people's houses come from the U.S., go to Ukraine, get manufactured, and then get shipped back. Well, guess what you can't do right now?
Exactly that.
Exactly that. So those are the kinds of things. What do? You are always solving a problem as a business owner. And you just need to find out what that problem is and go attack it and start to solve it. But as you go through those three phases of the truth, You can ignore the problem, you can deny there's a problem, or you can accept it as intuitively obvious and go nail it.
Now, just two things I want to touch upon. During the pandemic, I think being a handyman service company, right? When as soon as it was work from home became a thing and school from home became a thing, not everybody had desks, not everybody had internet and desktops and internet, hardwired connections. That's all handyman can do. A lot of those kind of things too, right? Run wires and stuff like that too. Basically, networking wires, not electrical wires. Stuff like that. I would have thought that was like you would be busy 24 hours a day just installing just that.
That's it. We actually did a lot of these. I call them the COVID doors. So you have an
Yeah.
open floor plan, and that's your office where you're working from home. But now, who else is at home with you? Your kids.
Everybody else.
So we put in a lot of French doors into offices so people could shut the door and keep the kids out.
To
So
do conference calls
yeah,
and privacy and stuff like that.
yeah, that's so funny. It is. We call them the COVID doors, and I used to joke. I'm like, hey, look, I can't take care of your kids, but I can keep your kids away from you. So hire me. And that was a joke we made. But yes, and even today, what's happening is if you think about
So
many
you
of the
installed closed door policy.
closed door policy, forget that open door thing. You want to keep the kids out. I'm going to use that. Actually, I'm going to use that. But if you think about what's going on now, is a lot of folks, even as they go back into the offices, their work from home is starting to be more like 2 days at work from home, maybe 3 days in the office. Well, 7 days in a week. Now what's happening is people are at their house more than they're at their office. Whereas for a lot of us, especially back when I was in corporate America, I was 100% at my office, way more than I was ever at my
Oh
house.
yeah, you just came home to eat dinner and go to sleep.
Right. So now with that, you're at the house more, you're seeing more, and people want more of that experience. And that's what we're seeing a lot with homeowners is that we have fixed break, but we also have that homeowner experience. Because today, especially younger folks want to hear about experiences. They don't want to have material possessions and have the biggest house like their parents did. But what I am seeing here in Atlanta is they want that experience. They want to have that kitchen where they can entertain with their friends. They want to have that cool room where they can go watch TV and watch the big game on the screen. Because now we're not traveling as much as we used to, but we also starting to see that we value that experience at home. So now we're starting to figure out how to capitalize on that. But that's where we've seen the demand and it stayed pretty strong. And we've had a really good run. And a lot of other people that I know here in the Atlanta market and in the other markets I work in have been doing really well.
It's funny. I'll share a funny story with you. When I started this show, I started it during the pandemic, in the very beginning of pandemic, because I knew that people will be stuck at home because I was hearing it. It was happening in China, and streaming services were becoming very popular. So I said, you know what? I'm going to start up a show so that I'm at least giving them valuable, good content, right? During this period that I have a captive audience, right, at home. They're stuck. They're not going anywhere, and they have more time to actually tune into my show. If they were in the office, they won't be able to, right? Because they get interrupted constantly, right? So in the very beginning, because like office furniture and stuff like that were the first to go, right? Nothing was available as a consumer. Nothing was available. You can't buy it anymore. And weights too, like weights, Peloton bikes and stuff like that.
Right.
So what I did was I went to Home Depot. I went to their home section and I bought a bar table, but it was not high enough. And then I picked up 4 cinder blocks. And I put the cinder blocks underneath it, and I raised the bar table on top of it to have a standing desk so I can do my show. That was my first studio.
Look at you now. I love it. See, that's
You
exactly.
improvise.
So that's it. You've built this incredible show off cinder blocks and a pool table and a bar table. That's perfect. Exactly what you have to do. Because you're right, you couldn't find anything. People are like,
I
well, no.
couldn't. I mean, what could I do? I mean, I didn't want to sit down, and right now I'm standing. Actually, I don't want to sit down and do a show. It's just a different type of energy when you're standing and talking like this, right? Then
Yeah.
sitting down, then you start getting tired, and I don't know, whatever. It just loses that energy, and I wanted that energy as I'm talking, standing up. So that's what I did. And the bar table. That's what I basically got 4 cinder blocks. My brother visited me. He goes like, why do you have cinder blocks in the middle of your living room? I said, oh, they ran out of standing desks. So I made my own standing desk.
Dude, I love that. That's what everybody should take away from the show. When you don't have what you need, get some cinder blocks. You got to
You know, you
improvise.
know,
I love it.
whenever, I've had multiple journeys, entrepreneurial journeys. There always comes a time, whether it's you call it an imposter syndrome hits you hard, or you just you had, like, let's say you had 15 clients and 10 of them decided to bail on you, right? They want to cancel the contract. Yeah, and those 10 represented 90% of the income that you were getting to make payroll. Really hard decisions. Your number one vendor that was supplying you with the lumber and stuff like that, whatever it was, for your thing, right? Was there any time, because I faced it in my, and it's really hard decision and hard time emotionally when you're going through that. And there was one episode I did with an entrepreneur who actually talked about the psychological and emotional toll it takes on human beings, on entrepreneurs who run these businesses. It's not all fun and games. There are some very hard emotional times. In your case, were there any moments that you said, you know what, this I just don't want to do this anymore. I want to bail out. That's it. I want to give up.
Yeah. Actually, I'm actually choking up thinking about it. I
I
felt
made you
like I was.
emotional now, huh?
Yeah, that you hit me hard on that one. I would say what happened is in the winter months we're a little slower. I felt like we were pretty successful going into the winter. This is back probably 17, before well before COVID happened. So felt like we were doing pretty good. And I was trying to expand into remodeling. Well, I was spending a lot of money and it was going out the door. Well, I had a line of credit put in place and I had 3 credit cards put in place. But by the time March hit, I had maxed them all out. I was down. It was it. And we were back to having to scramble to make payroll. And I just went, you got to be kidding me. After this many years of doing this, now I'm at it for 11, 12 years. I'm doing this again. And this just isn't worth it. Because now, again, I'm not paying myself. I'm making sure everybody else gets paid. And this isn't paying off. And at some point, man, I got to start making money because I can't just put my family through this. And that was one of those 3:30 in the morning, curl up moments. I mean, what am I going to do? And I went out there and I collected all the money and I made payroll and I stopped a couple things and I made the changes and we were able to build back up and pay myself all this money back by the end of the year. Got rid of all the debt on the credit cards, got rid of all the debt in the line of credit. I mean, it was not a good situation that I was able to get myself out of. But I had to do that in 17. Could I just close it? Yeah. I mean, I could have. One of the things that was in me was, one, I felt like I was very optimistic. That's something I learned about myself. It was hard. I felt like I was always realistic, not optimistic, but I was optimistic. 2, feel like I have a pretty good moral compass. I wasn't willing to just let people go and cut them off without getting paid. I didn't want to do that. But it was a difficult and dark time. This is after 11 years. I mean, if you think about it, 11, 12 years.
No, but Chris, once you have proven the concept, right, this works, and we have had 1,000 homes where we provided handyman services, right, or thousands of homes, whatever that number is, right? You have proven the concept, you've proven the thesis that this works. Why not? I mean, instead of racking up like credit card debt and selling your Mercedes and scaling down on the home and getting a smaller place or whatever, why not go out and seek capital and bring in a partner, whether it's a venture capital or angel investor or a co-founder to come in and bring and buy their way into this concept that you've proven for 10 plus years that it works.
So that's a great point. That's somewhere where I've landed just recently, where I'd be open for that. But in the beginning, there's a whole reason I didn't have a partnership. I didn't bring anybody else in, definitely not family money. And that's because I realized something about myself that I wasn't a good partner. Don't worry. This is that thing where you tell the girl, hey, look, it's not you, it's me. So I knew it was me. But I would say over the last year or so that I do believe in the concept. I do believe it can go nationwide and be great. well, I shouldn't say nationwide. There's a few states that may be difficult, but as we do it, it can definitely scale and scale well. And I think it's probably time. I just haven't formally started to put that together and start to seek that capital yet.
Okay. I mean, I think after a while, when you do something and it makes sense, that like I've proven the thesis, this is how we market, this is how we acquire customers, this is how we deliver the service. You have figured out a lot of things that you're not a startup anymore. Now you are now you're in that growth mode right now, and infusing the right type of capital into the business, whether it's partners or venture capital or anything like that. I think it makes a lot of sense to consider that, you know.
Yeah, I think you actually bring up a great point, and that's we've got a number of meetings with people around the nation, some capital just to get an idea what's going on, but also other handyman ideas who companies that want to get on this platform that's called the Trusted Toolbox.
Amazing. Now, in your book, you mentioned this concept of wolf pack. Do you want to elaborate on it and give examples?
Well, you talked about the multidimensional platform that we have. Well, the hardest part is it goes back and forth between homeowners and contractors. But my employees, my handymen, the people actually out there swinging the hammers, doing the work that you talk about and doing these things, a lot of them view themselves as lone wolves. They've been able to forage for food. They've been able to provide shelter for their families. They've been able to bring everything home. And they don't want to be in that world where they get knocked down. So I have to sit there and invite them into the wolf pack and let them know, hey, as part of our wolf pack, you guys will make more money, provide for your families, have easier lives. You won't have to worry about billing and invoicing and doing all this work outside of the job. You can just work on doing what you do best. And so I invite them into the wolf pack. But I also, as we scaled, we have to have process. We have to have good culture. If I start to grab my wolf by the neck and start to choke him down and tell him, you got to do it like this, or that's the only way you do it, they become domesticated dogs. And domesticated dogs, what do? They wait for you to feed them. They wait for you to solve their problems. They wait for you to open the door and let them go to the bathroom. These guys have to be lone wolves because they have to have that I'm going to take care of this homeowner today mentality and solve this problem for this customer. Because if they don't solve the problem, it comes flying back to us in a central location that can't really help. So my wolf pack is a bunch of lone wolves that come together and stay in this wolf pack because they can do better here. And so I know that sounds like a very mean and scary world when we're supposed to be talking about servant leadership and doing better for the world. But if you think about the people I'm working with, that's the concept. And that's why I'm always careful on how we do our training, how we do our processes, because I want that culture to be one of you go out there and flourish, you go out there and be an artist today. But as long as you follow our very simple processes, you will do better for yourself. Stay with us, you will find it.
Now, the other part of that equation is delivering amazing customer service, right? So one side of it, you have Wolfpack Handyman, right? You're bringing amazing talent, call them talents, right? They're talented at what they do. But the other side of it is the homeowner who wants to get an amazing experience, right? Making sure that the work got done. In the earlier example, you said that you had to redo all of that work, right? In that example earlier on. But what are the kind of your pillars of like customer service so that these wolf packs actually deliver amazing results to these customers so that they tell their neighbors and they tell other people, four and a half other people that you got to go back to the Trusted Toolbox because they're amazing.
So we have what we call our mission plaque. We don't have a mission statement. We have a mission plaque that just has just a series of words. And it starts with customer first. Second word is professionalism underneath our pyramid with our 5 principles where we set them up for success and they become the face of the company. What we do is we bring them in for training. We always train them around 3 things: customer experience, the processes we have here, and finally, something technical that's going to make their life easier. A better way to hang a door, better way to run electrical, better way to finish some drywall, perhaps, whatever it is. But we explained to them that if you do this great customer service piece that we're talking about, you're going to get the job done quicker, which means you make more money. You may get a tip. You may get an add-on work that you get more percentage on. You may go get a good review. Right now, we've got over 600 reviews in just Atlanta alone. And our closest competitor anywhere near to us has 200. So that's where we teach them that delivering the customer experience is more important sometimes than the quality that you finish with. We want you to have great quality, but if their customer experience was you showed up late, you never called me, I didn't know when you were going, as soon as you got here, you took off to go get materials, you didn't really tell me what you were doing, I thought you'd be done at 3, you were done at 5, okay, it looks great, but the whole experience stinks, so therefore I don't want to talk about it, and I don't want to tell 4.5 others. I don't want to take the time to go out there to Google and tell everybody how good you were. I'll just have to pass on this one. Yeah. And so that's our difference. And that's what makes us unique and professional.
No, I mean, you just took us through an incredible, journey of the Trusted Toolbox and yourself also, and especially the emotional roller coaster of being an entrepreneur. Yeah, given your 14 years of experience, what is your number one $100,000 expert insight into this journey? Would you even recommend this journey to anyone else?
I'm not going to answer the last question, but I'll answer the $100,000.
I asked one of my other guests. You know what he said? Don't do it. Don't do it.
It's a really hard business, and I'm filtering myself.
And the guy was an agency owner. He goes like, no, don't build another agency. Don't do it. That's what he said.
I love it. Yeah, I would probably say we all think that everybody else has got an easier job. Everybody else is ton it. Well, you know what? We're all struggling with a lot of the same issues. So my big thing I would tell everybody is if you're thinking of starting it, get a business plan. If you've already started it, go get a business plan template and start working through it. Not to make the paper happen, but to get in there and challenge assumptions and really see if you have the way to attract customers, convert customers, deliver to customers, and then do all the stuff underneath it to make sure that you're profitable. And then here's my big one. You need to write out a pro forma. You need to find somebody who's in this industry. And I'll tell you what, one of the things I found out was that a lot of entrepreneurs out there are very willing to share their time and experience, which is why I was so excited to come on your show. I'm willing to share. And I'm willing to take an hour because I love this stuff so much. And I want everybody to hear it. So here it is. When you put your pro forma together, I want you to take your revenue and cut it in half. And I want you to take your expenses and double it. And then you come back and answer the question to yourself and to others. Can you live with that? And if you can, you go. If you can't, then you need to go back and redo everything. But if you try to say, well, that'll never really happen, bull, because it happens. And it happens more often than not. And it happened to me. And I was able to live with it and deal with it and get through it and get up there. But that was really a kick in the butt.
That's an amazing, wise words, I would say. Amazing. Well put. I think what you summarized is that by itself is like, it's the amazing golden nugget. Like a lot of entrepreneurs, they are overly optimistic about how much revenue they can make. And they way underestimate the expenses related to making that revenue, especially when no one knows you, right? You have to put a variable in there that no one knows you. Things will go wrong, right? The product that you made, you thought that you're gonna get so much out of it, or it's gonna be this incredible product. The lid keeps on coming off, and you can't ship it to people because the tomato sauce is gonna be all over the package by the time the customer gets it. You thought you made an amazing tomato sauce. Yeah, tomato sauce when it stayed inside the jar was good. When it's all over the box and the consumer just got it, it's bad. In your example, if you you hire these people that you believe that are going to deliver amazing handyman services, they go and like in your journey, it was horrible, right? You had to go and give them the time off and just go and Friday, Saturday, Sunday from your weekend. You ended up redoing all of that. Things like that will happen. It's really wise words. And thank you, Chris, for being on the show. Really appreciate you sharing your journey and all of this wisdom and everything. And I think it's going to be tremendous help for a lot of entrepreneurs and other founders.
Awesome. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I had fun.
Yeah. And thank you, audience, for tuning in. We had some live audience members who participated. And also, I thank you for all of your comments and questions and everything else that you posted. And I also want to thank you if you're catching this on a recording. We have several more episodes coming up for this year. So definitely tune in. We have more amazing guests as Chris here that will share their journey and their expertise so that we can all learn from it. Thank you, Chris. Thank you for
All
being
right.
here.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.